Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. Welcome back. Hope you're off to a great start. Whatever time of day you're seeing this, or if it's middle of the week, end of week, hope you had or are having a great week. What I tried to do, I said this kind of at the start of the year, was once a month kind of have these panel discussions where we do a little bit of a deeper dive into some specific topics that we either get asked about or see as kind of one of the common things people have questions about. And of course, there's no escaping AI at this point. It's kind of one of those things where if you haven't embraced it already, it's probably time to start doing that and seeing how it can benefit you because it's only going to make life easier. I know a lot of the scary points where it was going to replace, but at this point, I think people are noticing that it's not replacing, it's just enhancing and assisting. So that's one of the big things that I think a lot of people have been hesitant on. So I brought in two people who have been strong proponents of use of AI in the job search, just because they'll be able to speak a little bit more knowledgeably than I will on the subject. So Avianca, Cedric, thank you so much for jumping on again in terms of being with me here and taking some time to break this down.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks.
All right. So first question is just kind of the basic one. And as I alluded to, both of you have been strong proponents of use of AI in the job search and, making sure that it's part of what you do when you're breaking that down. So kind of jumping back to when it kind of really hit you that this is something that people not only should be utilizing, but, some of the benefits that you started to see early on. So Cedric, I'll go to you first. What are some of the tools that you would say are you found were very beneficial early on, and as you were kind of utilizing AI throughout, coaching people on their job search, what were some of the pain points that you were seeing as well, some of the frustrations people had early on when they tried to use different forms of AI to assist them?
Yeah, so I think like most people, I of course started out with ChatGPT through OpenAI, and just their initial version of it, which of course has its own different kind of challenges depending on what version you're using. If you're starting out with the earlier version, of course the data set itself only extends up to 2021, so anything beyond that point is not necessarily going to be represented there. So I think jumping in there initially, which was kind of the launch point, and then some of the pain points ultimately ended up really being focused more so on the prompting itself, understanding what to actually type directly into this bot in order to get the responses that you were seeking, and the processes of like basically refining those prompts in order to, again, extract the information that you want and get to the point of, producing, whether it's a set of questions or thoughts or potential ideas or even, job titles associated to your skill set. But outside of that, the one thing I was kind of caution against and kind of worry about, honestly, if this could be a pain point, would be consideration for people's data and just knowing how important that is. So being mindful of, the sensitive nature of some of the information that you might want to put in there. You might want to kind of pump the brakes a little bit and just, engaging people there and just making sure that people have awareness around use case, but at the same time are knowledgeable about some of the other aspects of it where you don't want to put your social security number into ChatGPT, for example. But yeah, starting with ChatGPT, and then I built out and started working with some other stuff, but I'm sure we'll get there.
Yeah, definitely. So same question to you then, Avianca, and I know that you kind of use it for yourself, and that's one of the main reasons you and I had connected weeks ago, and I had you on was to kind of talk about how you were doing your job search a little differently. So, what were some of those pain points for you? Because I'm sure it didn't all click at once. So what were some things that you tried out? You're like, no, I don't like this, or some of the things that initially you tried and were like, this is exactly what I wanted it to do.
Yeah, I think the same thing that Cedric said, like learning how to communicate with the system, like not really understanding as someone that was new to it. It's not the type of thing that you can walk into and think that it's automatically fixed. You have to break AI and then it becomes fixed. It learns your rhythm, it learns your tone, it learns what you're looking for. When I talk to a few of my friends or connections, I like to tell them that like I argue with ChatGPT all the time because I'm like, depending on what I'm looking for, I have to again learn how to speak its language or learn how to make it speak my language. And also pivoting off to what Cedric said when he said being mindful of how much information you are giving to the generator about you. I know a lot of people, as they go through and they're picking apart their resume, sometimes that confidential information is still on the resume, all the way down to your address, all the way down to your email, your phone number. So again, yeah, being very, very mindful of exactly what you're putting in and what you're expecting to be extracted. Like, you just really have to like fine tune your approach. That was my biggest pain point, learning how to talk to it, because I would look at it like, why isn't it doing what I want it to do? You know, like, I'm saying all these things, I'm writing all these sentences. Why is it not, producing the outcome that I'm looking for? So it's definitely learning the lingo for sure. For sure.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So you both hit on Chat GPT, and I think that's one of the primary ones that people think of when they think AI. But through your research or talking to other people that are similarly trying to utilize this or coach people on utilizing it, what are some of the other tools that you have found to be beneficial or heard have been beneficial to others as they're exploring different options and not just putting them all their options in the Chat GPT box?
Ooh, there's so many out there. I've actually been really fortunate to connect with a few people who are kind of like AI nerds, like I am. Like, we find it very intricate and like kind of cool. We're not on the other side where we're like, oh my God, like technology is taking over. We're more so like embracing it because we don't want to get left behind.
Yeah.
And there is a website called There's an AI for That. And just what it sounds like, there's simply AIs for just about everything. And so I have a spreadsheet of 500 different AI programs that I can use. And whenever I'm thinking of doing something, creating something, modeling something, I go to that spreadsheet and I hit Control F and I find the right generator, that's going to do the thing that I'm looking to do. But then it goes back to being a student again, because like you said, each platform is going to operate a different way. It's going to speak a different language. Cedric, I'll pivot over to you to see what you got.
Yeah, so for me, what I found is it's actually important to learn more so about the large language models that are backing a lot of the systems versus the bots themselves. And I found that because one of the things that I did originally, and this was kind of before the onset of what we see with GPT-4, where you can create your own bot essentially, or your own GPT, I guess they call it, your generative pre-trained transformer. Is I actually set one up for the purpose of what I was intending to do and who I was intending to support. So like under the EduHustle brand, I created Eddie, which is the EduHustle AI bot. But that was through a platform called po.com, where essentially anybody can go in and create their own bot based on whatever the premise is that you want. So for me, being someone who supports educators primarily and works in the ed tech space and in the industry, I figured, why not create a bot specifically for anybody who is transitioning out of teaching or the education space, where they can go in and basically talk directly to this bot. In which case, even shameless plug, like I even created a book, which includes not only access to that bot. I mean, the bot's open for free. I can share the link with people, but within this, it also kind of breaks down the scope of use case for it, as well as like over 100 prompts. Because again, prompts being the pain point. You got to give people more information in terms of like, here's what you feed it versus just go here. So thinking about it from that lens and perspective of what is it that people need, who are the people that you're intending to serve, and then creating it based on that versus, again, there's a bot for that. You can find them for everything. But if you have a specific intent, you can, essentially go in and create this thing. And it's, honestly, I was thinking about this earlier when I was dropping my son off, and I was like, it's to the point where the building of it is not as intricate as people think when it comes to these bots. Because again, if you set up a bot, for example, on Poe, it's going to be backed by the same large language models that we see, right? GPT or Chat GPT, Claude, Instant, whatever the case is. But you just have an initial kind of scaffold for it. Like, you are a bot that's going to help teachers get new jobs, blah, 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 right? So that when they access it, the questions and the prompts are all based solely on that. And so are the responses. So the building of it is not really like, you don't have to know how to code or any of that stuff to set up a bot. If we, I guess I'll close it out by giving, I guess, an analogy. Whereas you would think it's kind of like building this intricate, piece of furniture in your house.
Hmm.
In essence, it's as simple as taking like an IKEA table and screwing the legs in. It's pretty much that simple. And I think that that's the best use case in terms of what I've seen for specifically creating things or having access for people to use it. And I've done that also for like homeschool families. So being able to produce it yourself and kind of add your touch to it just makes everything a lot easier to navigate.
Yeah, definitely. And as someone who's assembled a lot of furniture, I appreciate the analogy.
Like,
Yeah.
So as I'm sure we all know, when you're transitioning into something new, the job search is overwhelming in general. So now if you're adding a new layer to it and utilizing AI, people aren't going to know where to start. So, we're going to talk on some specific things on how you can use AI to assist with interview prep and resume building. But you've both been on the show, and I think we've both discussed, the first step is just figuring out what you want to do before anything else. So, when people come to you asking for advice or asking how you did it yourself in your job search, how can you start to utilize algorithms to kind of give you some insight on, not just where you can go, companies you can go, but what positions, occupations specifically you can target based on, your skill set, So starting the search that way, can you coach them to utilize AI to figure out what they want to do with their next step? And I'll start with you, Cedric.
Yeah, well, I'll save my I guess most prominent point for next, but an initial kind of jump in thing would be if you go into ChatGPT, whether it's the free version or GPT-4, I would just start by just introducing yourself. I am a teacher with 20 years experience in K-12. I've taught math, science, reading. What are some other job alternatives or job titles that would align to my skill set? Hit send, see what it gives you. And then from there, it's a kind of volley back and forth where you'll get questions. Is this meeting your needs, whatever? And then you can kind of plug in more of your skill set, more of your expertise. And then it will kind of frame and shape things and continue to give you just more refined answers. But I would just say, start with a simple thing of, this is who I am. This is what I've done. What else is out there for me? And seeing what the response is.
And for me, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I would also say, think of ChatGPT as something that is an ebb and flow. Don't like throw everything at it at one time. Give it in small segments. It's the same way we receive information. You have to kind of narrow down the focus in order to make the algorithm really work for you or be more effective. It's almost the same way as how we are expected to look for a job. You have to literally clarify, like be clear, have clarity on what you're looking for. As Cedric said, your name is, I'm in this niche, I'm in this industry, I'm looking for this, and it can produce it for you. You just have to, again, it's the language and the way that you present the information. You don't want to give it too much at once, because then it'll be all over the place and you won't have, any type of idea of where you're going or what you're really looking for. It gives a lot of information, which is great. But if you are trying to be specific, then you need to use specific keywords or specific phrases. Like, you just don't need to just, think I want to do this and I really like doing this too. And what kind of job should I have? Or what's the next title I should have? It's you don't want to be redundant. You just want to make sure, again, that you're being very specific on what you're looking for to keep it, streamlined.
Yeah, for sure. And there's the human aspect that's always going to play a part. You're not going to say, what can I do? And it'll give you two options and you're like, okay, that's what I'm doing then. So, but being said, as you use it, have you found success? How beneficial was it when you're breaking down, these are the skills that I have. This is what I'd like to do. Did it spit out ideas to you that did the research and then found, yes, I absolutely do want to do this? Or have you heard of people doing that and they've had similar success?
Is this me or said?
Either one of you, yeah.
You can jump in. Go ahead.
Thanks. I was gonna say, for me personally, I can't speak for all people. ChatGPT, honestly, AI, the various ones that I use, they've actually opened up some Pandora boxes in my brain and have helped me see within this thing that I want to do, several different other boxes. You know, the little Russian dolls that they have, and they just get smaller and smaller. Like I've played on that pendulum before where I'm like, wow, I never even thought, you know, that I could actually pivot to that. So it's helped me be like, let me stop applying in this particular title per se. Let's say, you know, people operations. At one point that was very oversaturated. What else can I do that's in the operations segment? And then it gave me those blocks to where I was like, aha, so I can leave this part alone and go focus on a different name or a different title, you know, that falls underneath people operations.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. So then Cedric is someone who's also coaching people, to use this. Have they come back to you and said, hey, this really helped, it opened my eyes to this that I never really thought of before as well?
Yes, and I've seen more so than just thinking about terminology and verbiage. A lot of times is there's kind of some, I guess, misnomers and kind of loss in understanding of certain things. Like, for example, the thing about the education system and the ed speak and things that we use there versus going and looking at like ed tech industry and the language that's used there. There, you kind of have to be almost like essentially like bilingual. And whenever you're going into a system like this, it can basically provide that type of information and break down things where, before you would have to dig, right? If you were doing a search online through whatever engine, and it's kind of like, well, what does this do? What did, oh, a product associate, what do they do? What does that mean? What does the day-to-day look like? Where versus instead of having to sift through articles, right, of information and find the answers that you're seeking, you can essentially get conversational responses back of like, this is what this person does, right? Depending on what system you're using and how up to date and things like that it is, you can get more of like an in-depth look and perspective at aspects that might be interesting to you. So I have seen it happen that way. I mean, even for myself, just using it for just other aspects. I mean, I've even used it just looking at health stuff, right? Like I'm plant-based, like I don't eat meat or anything. So I'm like, all right, well, can you give me some other potential ideas of like protein sources or, what are some recipes using these ingredients, and it can produce a formulation based on that. So if you just want to go further, then I mean, there's possibility for it. And then definitely for, the job aspect of things, if you already kind of have your resume or, your experiences on hand, you can basically say, these are the things I've done. What are the recommendations? And then based on each of those recommendations, right, whether it's, customer success manager or project manager, whatever, then you can ask more questions more specifically related to those things to see if there's an actual alignment between your skill set, what you enjoy doing, and that thing that they said, right? They being the system, that it would make sense for you to potentially look at.
Right, definitely. So then let's pivot to the resume interview prep help, because that's a very useful tool as well. And obviously, if you type in, what skills do I need to be in ed tech, and they'll break it down for you. You can certainly just put that in there. What questions might someone ask me during an interview for a position in learning and development, and you'll get that outpouring as well. So, I'll start with you, Avianca. How do you try to be strategic with that and not just kind of the copy and paste of, pull this information in, but do a little bit more in terms of how you can build those skills, highlight what you've done, and then just kind of utilize that for interview prep. Now that I see it needs this, I'm already kind of putting in my mind, these are some questions that are going to be asked to me during the interview.
Honestly, I think one of the easiest, and easy is kind of like a word I try not to use, because when you spend a lot of time doing something, it becomes easy. But for someone that doesn't want to touch AI, it could be like not easy. It's groundbreaking for them.
Right.
But for me, one of the things that I really love to do is incorporate the specific role, like that role that I really, really want, putting it into ChatGPT and seeing exactly like what they think the industry and title specific questions would be. And while I have not used an interview prep yet, one of the things I do love doing is kind of testing myself to see what the response would be. So if I ask ChatGPT to ask me an interview question, and I formulate it myself, if I were to answer this, insert my phrase, it's literally going to coach me through it and tell me what my pros and my cons were, or where I lack confidence at, and where, hey, that was a really strong, sense of terminology. Like I like that. I think that one of the cool parts to the interview prep, the name is, it's leaving me, but there's an interview prep where you can either be on camera or you can use the audio, and it will tell you whether or not like your voice trembled, or whether or not you sounded confident, or if it sounded like a white lie. Like it literally kind of says, you might want to rethink, that statement. But for me, I mean, interview prep is easy, but we can't forget the human aspect. A computer is great to reference, but there's nothing like AI is a tool. It's to be used as a tool. It's not used to be, or it shouldn't be used to replace human interaction.
Mhm.
Because a human is who is going to interview you, not a robot. Not yet, at least.
Yeah. Hopefully not ever.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So then, Cedric, same question to you. As you're coaching people, what are some things that you tell them? This is great to use, but maybe like she alluded to, be wary of doing this too often or relying on this too much, things like that.
I mean, so for me, it's kind of leaning on the idea of, a human's going to interview you. What I kind of essentially tell people do, or do myself, and emphasize and kind of put into place, not just in interviews, but in general. And this, I kind of alluded to this being like my one key takeaway, I think, from this whole conversation. For anybody using the, whatever GPT or whatever, AI format you're using, create a persona, right? Actually input the persona that you are expecting to talk to, or that you are hoping to get the information from. And what I mean by that is something like, a prompt as simple as, you will now assume the persona of a hiring manager with 25 years experience in X industry, and you've hired 200 people for this role. Enter, right? Leave it there. And actually you can ask it, do you understand? And what it will respond is, yes, I understand. I am now an HR manager, blah, 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 blah. How can I help you? Now you're talking to the HR manager. You're not talking to the system anymore. So you've, in essence, almost turn this computer into the person that you could ultimately end up being interviewed by. So from that point, the questions become very straightforward and simple, right? Blanket statements. What are some interview questions that I could be potentially asked whenever it comes to this job? They will run them down for you. Another aspect of what I always tell people is, or think about myself, honestly, is if this thing has all this information and it can provide you the questions, you can bet your MacBook that it's also going to provide the responses too. So don't just give me the interview questions that I could be asked. Give me sample responses that are going to be most favorable.
Mhm.
It'll do that too. So then that way you kind of already have a preemptive plan, and you already have some type of preparation in place. And then from there, you can kind of figure out, well, my human aspects of what relates to these questions. And one recommendation I always give is try to use as much narrative and personal story as possible when you're interviewing, just because it's easier to talk about yourself and the things that you've actively done versus trying to figure out, how do I respond to this question in a way that makes me sound great? Like, just talk about what you've done, what you've accomplished. But again, you can prep yourself by giving it that persona of whoever it is that you're, going to be talking to. And then from there, you just pick the brain of that expert.
Yeah, definitely. So then some of the other ways that I've seen people utilizing an AI throughout their job search is kind of more catered to the individual. So using it to build a network, connecting with people, other job seekers, setting it up to have an algorithm to alert you to opportunities that kind of align with what you're already looking for. So Avianca, I'll start with you. What are some of the ways that you try to utilize that, or some of the ways that you have found that it's been beneficial in that it's catered specifically to you, and kind of building your brand, building your network, and staying alerted to opportunities as they come through?
Honestly, you kind of, everything you just touched base on is that's exactly it. like the job alerts and making sure you're not subscribing to all of the job alerts, because again, like having a strategy on how to do it. And really, like when you think about LinkedIn, it is a working algorithm. That is how it shows who you should follow, or people that follow this person. You know, it gives you the momentum to try and tell you, like, look, based on the jobs you've been applying for, here are 5 people that are in that industry that you should probably follow and connect with.
Mhm.
I know there's, for whatever reason, there's like this, not for everyone, but most people, there's like this imposter syndrome of like, man, I don't want to hit that connect button first.
Right.
And it's literally like, why not? If they're in the industry, they're going to 9 times out of 10 post about things within the industry. I know a lot of people are trying to break into tech, you know, so why wouldn't you use the algorithm? That's why it's created, you know, and the same thing with responding to I can't think of the algorithm, there I go, the acronym, but it's like having other people's network within your thread. That's also another way to kind of beef it up. Honestly, I mean, overall, when I think about like the opportunity to connect with people for jobs on LinkedIn, it's there's more to LinkedIn than just looking for a job. If you build out those connections
Mhm.
and use most of the AI powered tools that are already out there, whether it's on the job page or on your threads or on the, you know, frequent follower list, like it's there for a reason. So if you want to learn more about it, you have to connect with people who are talking about it, people like Cedric, people like, you know, people that know the things about AI if you want to break the barrier.
Mhm. Cedric, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think there's just a lot to be said about leveraging, you know, some of the, I guess, more basic tools, if you want to call them that. Even, you know, I think I made a post earlier, it was more so talking about, you know, there's of course all these benefits to doing a lot of different, you know, stuff. And, you know, we have Social Saturday and that whole connection thing. But what I realized just this past week was that, I mean, within LinkedIn, you can create a group chat, I think of like up to maybe 50 people in a, you know. So what did I do? I was like, I want to help educators join this group chat with me. And it's like just a party chat of like shared information and resources and actually connecting with people. So yes, we're still using technology. Yes, we're still leveraging the algorithm, whoever saw that post or whatever. But from there, you know, you can build, right, and create a springboard of different things. And I mean, I guess related to, you know, the AI context of the conversation, some of the most simple things you can do is, of course, have it actually, you know, prepare language or verbiage that you can send out to people. Because I know that there are definitely situations where, as Avi kind of, you know, alluded to, you know, she's talking like the imposter syndrome of, well, how do I talk to this person or whatever. It's like, well, you don't necessarily have to formulate that idea or that, you know, intro anymore. You can go in and be like, hey, I'm trying to create a connection request with this type of person or this whatever. What are, you know, what can I say to, you know, and it doesn't have to be like anything creepy or underlying. It's just like, I don't know how to introduce myself and I don't feel comfortable writing this. This is what I want to say. Can you help me? It will give you, you know, at least a template or something like that. So that from there, you know, you reach out to people and it's not really you thinking so much of like, how do I address this person? It's just like, you know, keep the template, copy and paste it, send it to them. And then from there, it's like, can we have a coffee chat? Let's get on a Zoom call. And now you can just be human and leverage the tool, you know? So that's kind of where I'm leaning with it. It's just, how can you use it, the technology in those cases, but also have it basically trend and kind of tier and skew directly toward the ultimate goal, which is the human connection.
Exactly. And you can even tailor it to, with certain connection requests, when you can send your note, there's a character limit. So, you know, you can even say it has to be a minimum of this, you know, say a lot in a little bit of time, and it can help you there too. And then like Cedric said, you got to make it your own. There you go. You just made a connection, like done.
Yeah.
And I connect with almost everybody. So like, if people follow me, if you send me a follow request, I send you a connection. Like, just because it doesn't hurt. It doesn't really cost, it don't cost anything. So, you know, there are people I think who are just kind of like me, like, whatever, connect.
Yeah.
Unless it's, you know, unless it's like a red flag, profile or something. It's like, no, if you seem like you are in this space, in this industry, whatever, who knows what could come from it.
Exactly.
Yeah. As long as they ask, what's a non-weird way I can try to connect, then you'll get that.
Yeah.
So, and then Cedric, you kind of already touched on this a little bit, but just wanted to expand a bit as our last question as part of this discussion. So when people are starting to utilize AI, for their job search, for resume tips, interview prep, are there any ethical considerations, any biases that candidates need to be aware of as they're using this tool, preparing for these types of things? How do you coach them to be wary of that type of thing as they're going through preparation for their interview or putting together their resume?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's consideration for, for bias. And I mean, you have to think about, and I think most recently with the information I've seen is that a lot of the systems have gotten better with, even with kind of the adaptations and implementation of, some of the visual creation like that you might see in like GPTs and things like that, where they can produce those images. Whereas before you would ask for a certain image and you'd get a certain output, not necessarily representative of like what you were even looking for, right? Which is always questionable. But my understanding is those things have gotten a little better. But I would always be kind of cautious and wary of like inputting personal information, anything that's sensitive, and just really focus it more so on the skill set, like what makes you great, and go building from there, right? Using these key points about my experience, my expertise, not my age, not where I went to college, any of those things. It's just like, well, this is what I've done, right? These are the things that I've accomplished. These are the awards I've won. Then going in and referencing those things specifically so that you don't necessarily have to even consider that this is going to be a bias because I'm Black or because I'm a woman or any of that stuff. So focus really on solid metrics, the hard set kind of data points, your real experiences, the things that you've been through, lived, and ultimately the things that you can prove as to why you would be an asset to whatever company or organization that you're planning to go into, regardless of where you come from, what you look like, or whatever.
All right. Avi, same question. What do you try to be wary of as you use it?
The reality. It's almost like you can't expect, I mean, as smart as a smartphone is, as smart as a generator can be, you have to read what it puts out. I've literally seen people just take the whole thing, throw it together, and they're like, woo, that's gonna be fire. And it's like you didn't read down to the very bottom where, ChatGPT may have been unbiased or provided, just something that wasn't factual. Misrepresentation is big. This is your brand, this is your platform, it's a professional platform. I would say read it to a T, make sure that it fully understood the assignment, make sure that it understood what your approach was, what the end goal was. And, just you have to never get that comfortable. Even with our own work, when we produce it ourselves, we read it, we have someone else read it, we edit it again. And so you need to treat ChatGPT, AI, all the same way. You have to just double check yourself before you.
That's so good. I always, yeah, because, and I don't know if anybody else on the call can recognize this or realize it, but sometimes when you read things, yeah, I came up with this phrase in my head. I'm like, your AI is sticking out. Like you can kind of tell sometimes, and it's a real thing. If you tamper with this stuff enough, you get into the flow of understanding like how responses can be formulated, and you're like, those emojis in front of all of those bullet points. I've seen that before, So I just thinking about those things too. I mean, you made an amazing point.
Yeah, it's true. And like you said, the more of us that use it, there are some people, and I mean, not here to knock you, but like we see the AI written all over that. Like it's not you, it's not your tone, it's not how you talk and all of your other posts, it's not you. And that's why, as we all said, all three of us, putting your tone to it, going back through and like, I don't talk like that. Let me put something that I would say, robot. Don't depend on the robot. Like use your brain still. It's a tool.
Yeah, for sure. So then before I let you both go, I know you both do a lot of stuff, very active on LinkedIn and, host a lot of discussions and share a lot of links, everything like that. So before I let you go, I'll start with you, Avi. What do you want to plug? Where can people find you, connect with you, and what are you doing? Then Cedric, take some time. I know you already plugged the book. Do that again. Anything else that you're working on, but both of you take some time to just kind of share all the projects and all the good that you're doing throughout these networks.
All right, well, I'm Avianca Manning. You can find me at linkedin.com/n/Avianca Manning. No spaces, no dashes. I'm on a short little hiatus right now of like popping out on the timeline with all the jobs and things, but I will be back and I can't wait to connect and reconnect with all of my connections.
Yeah, and I'm Cedric Scott Jr. Pretty sure on LinkedIn you'll see like my little M Ed for master education at the end of my name too. And yeah, you can connect with me there. Questions about AI or anything like that, even like that chatbot, people can reach out. I respond to DMs all the time. It's not a thing. And yeah, I did mention the book, so this is feasible. You can grab it. It's on Amazon. It's on my website, eduhustle.co, eduhustle.co. If you need, anything related to supports, getting into AI, related to the job search. And yeah, I'm just moving around a lot there between LinkedIn and of course the website. You can get a lot of different resources and things like that. One other thing I wanted to kind of throw out to people as well is I'm really pushing in terms of supporting educators and trying to create a bridge directly to opportunity. So there is actually an educator database that I created where, again, it's a simple Google form on the site. You can input your information, you automatically get logged into it. I send out emails about opportunities and resources, and I'm also in the process of connecting with other people in recruiting and HR and trying to really, again, create the bridge between job seeker and the actual person who is, awarding or offering the opportunity, so that there's not so much gray space in between. So join the database and hopefully I can help some people.
Awesome. Awesome. Love it. So if you're watching this on YouTube or listening to it, you have questions regarding AI and how you can utilize it, feel free to visit LinkedIn, leave a comment on the post or message either one of them. But we thank you all for listening, for watching. Have a great week. We'll talk to you again soon.